Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, your Uncle Jim has something special for you. Our guest is 77-year-old Greg Matthews, a former lung transplant patient who now has to have a kidney transplant because his immunosuppressive medications have damaged his kidneys trying to take care of those lungs. So, Greg is currently eligible for a kidney transplant, but under some very restrictive conditions. First, his transplant center has suggested a living kidney donor transplant. They feel he's not eligible to receive a deceased donor transplant from UNOS, the Organ Transplant and Procurement Transplant Network. That is where about 2/3 of all transplanted kidneys come from. Secondly, none of his family qualify to donate to Greg. His wife and his daughters, they're the wrong blood type. Greg's an O, they're AB. He has no family beyond that because he was raised as a single child by a divorced mother. Third, and I'm going to let Greg explain this to you in more detail, but he's constantly being evaluated. He's to be reevaluated on April 19th, 2023 to remain on the list. It's a little complicated. Like I said, I'm going to have Greg explain that to you when we ask questions. Fourth, because of his blood type, type O, he requires a donor with the same blood type. However, a healthy donor with A, B, or AB blood type can participate in a paired donation program, allowing him to receive a compatible kidney. There's some question about that at this time, whether the current center that he is at will permit that. Again, Greg's going to explain that to you. Fifth, transplants are only available within an individual's window of opportunity. If he's too weak or too sick to undergo the surgery with declining health, then the surgery won't go forward. So it becomes less likely as more time passes that he will get a transplant. But we remain optimistic, and we believe that Greg will get his transplant. Finally, dialysis may be a problem for Greg. He has been told that dialysis puts him at risk because of deadly infections due to the suppressive medications that he takes that are required to protect his lung transplant, but yet they lower his immune system, particularly when he's in crowds or when he's with other people. And of course, with home transplant or peritoneal transplant, you always run the risk of peritonitis. So an infection problem for Greg on dialysis. Greg is currently listed at Tampa General Hospital. The link to contact the hospital will be streaming across your screen when I discuss those questions with him. They're also in the comments to the original broadcast that's pinned to the top of my Facebook page. So if you're looking where those are, you want to drill down on Greg, what's happening, you can go to the top of my Facebook page and check that out. His transplant coordinator for starting the donation process is Melanie C. Fletcher. You can call Melanie at 813-844-7137. That's 813-844-7137. #5, #1. Again, this will be streaming across the screen when Greg and I talk about this. It's also in the comments. So if you end up watching the replay, be sure you check out the comments because that's how you can help Greg. You can also contact Tampa General directly and fill out a questionnaire. You can call them at 831-844-5669. That's 813-844-5669. Or you can follow the link to fill out the form. That's tampagenerallivingdonation.org. Greg also has a blog site, www.kidneyforgreg.com. If you want more information, we've also put a kidney page up on Facebook, facebook.com/100-889-23551-1606. And again, all of this will stream across your screen during the broadcast, and it's all in the comments to the broadcast on Facebook. So even if you don't catch us live, if you catch the replay, the information there to help Greg is still in the comments, and you can help Greg out by filling out that form and trying to help get him donated. So please give a very warm welcome to my friend Greg Matthews. Greg, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. I wasn't in a fight or anything. My dermatologist visited me this week. Being immunosuppressed, all those little skin cancers on your body seem to pop up every couple of months. So this is a frequent problem for me.
Okay. And you live in Florida. People should understand there's a lot of sun there.
I was raised in Florida. In fact, my dermatologist says these are the result of being on the surfboard too much and not wearing a hat. But,
okay.
Yeah, we live in the Tampa Bay area.
Did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
You did, except that this whole question about I'm on a list, but we don't know what this list is. It's a very unusual situation. Every time I explained it to someone, people say, it can't be so. Even my nephrologist who used to head up the team said, you can't be right. But my situation is that I have been given clearance to have a living donor transplant if I have the transplant completed by April 19th, which was 6 months after the date I was put on the list.
What's a living donor?
I don't really know. I did talk to them this week trying to clarify, because you raised the question, Jim. Apparently, if I have a donor now that is that's not an A or B or an O, where they couldn't possibly, it has to be a paired matching, they would consider extending the time period. I do not know whether or not I'll be back on the list. If I don't find someone by then, it's really up in the air. I asked them why, because when I ask them why, it seems to come down to the fact that I am a lung transplant recipient. In 2013, I received a single right lung, and the statistics typically for a lung transplant is about 10 years. And as they told me on the phone, I'm already 9 years out. I guess implying the question, what's it worth it giving me a kidney at this particular point?
Gotcha.
But
talk to us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experiences.
I'll be glad to. I grew up in Satellite Beach, Florida, Cape Kennedy area during the missile years. And when I graduated, I went to Washington, D.C. and worked as a geometry teacher there in one of the high schools for several years before returning to night school, getting a CPA license. And I started practicing as a CPA back in the 70s, moving back to Florida. And my wife and I ran a company since 1970. Was 1980. We had a company we developed, and when my transplant came, we had to sell it. We had 30 employees here in town. So that's pretty much my career. I've been active on the board of the International Dyslexia Association. I was treasurer, a number of nonprofit, mostly in the handicap area, mentally handicapped. I have 2 daughters and I have two granddaughters. I've been extremely fortunate that both of them live nearby. In fact, one of them stopped by this evening. So I'm really a very, very lucky man. I really, life has been awfully darn good to me. If I had another 5 years, it would be even greater. I'd love to see my 10-year-old graduate from high school. So, one or the other, I hope to make it. So with your help, maybe I'll make it.
You mentioned your wife. What's your wife's first name?
Kathy.
Kathy. Okay.
We've only
Hi,
been married.
Kathy.
Hi.
We've only been married 55 years.
Only.
She doesn't say no. Yes. She was my partner in business for what, 40 of those years. So maybe we should have double time.
Okay. Our friend Shannon Mulroy wants to say hello from Long Island and is asking people to message her to be Greg's donor to come forward and help out. And our buddy Steve Bundridge is watching too, just so you know, Greg.
Thanks.
So little kidney solution support here tonight, my friend.
You guys
Let's talk about your lung transplant. When did you first begin to experience difficulties with your lungs?
2006, 7.
about 2006 or 7, we used to we had a summer home in Red Lodge, Montana that we maintained. And in 2006 or 7, we bought some hiking gear to hike around this one lake at 10,000 feet. And Kathy was able to walk it. I could only walk about half a mile. And that was the first time I really noticed something was happening. So it's just what I had was a disease that is the most common disease. It's, I guess it's when I'm trying to think of the words here, more men die from this disease than women die of breast cancer, and you don't even know what it is. It was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It's where something happens to your DNA, possibly with a cold virus, that switches a link in the DNA and sets the system off to attack itself. And in pulmonary fibrosis, the air sacs in your lungs are attacked, and they swell and they turn, hard. They become fibrosis. So slowly, the interior of your lungs gradually hardens up, and it's one of the leading conditions for men dying. The reason it's not reported is because the loss of oxygen and the impact of this on your lungs, it impacts so many of your other organs, your liver, your kidneys, and your heart. So we were in 2013, I'd been treated by a pulmonologist, and he retired. And I knew something was wrong with me, but he never really described it. And the guy that took over his practice, the first time I met him, he said, "You need to go see the transplant team." And so Kathy and I went up and saw the transplant team at Gainesville, Florida. And within 6 months, they put us on the list. It was happening that rapidly. And idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, it accelerates in a stair-step fashion. You're okay for a while, then you'll have a cold and you'll drop down dramatically. And eventually you just don't have air to live off of. And the only treatment for it is a lung transplant. So unfortunately, I also had a mitral valve issue, which is a leaky valve in the valves in the heart. And they wouldn't have caused any problem at all, except the impact of the pulmonary fibrosis required that I receive both a valve fix and a lung transplant at the same time. So Gainesville put me on their list in May of 2012, was it?
Yeah, or 2013.
13 in May. In July, they called me up and said, "We're taking you off the list because we think your surgery is too complicated." We referred to Denver Jewish National, which is the leading pulmonology hospital in the country, and they diagnosed the pulmonary fibrosis. I remember we were sitting in the room, and on the back of the door is this sign, and it showed a picture of what pulmonary fibrosis was. And I was telling Kathy, "Boy, am I glad I don't have that." And the doc came in and next to me and said, "This is what you have." But they didn't want to do surgery on me. they recommended me to go to Duke. I went to Duke. And Duke turned me down, and after Duke, Mayo Clinic turned me down for various reasons. They thought my diaphragm was paralyzed, but a couple of the doctors I met suggested I go to Houston. And so I went down to Houston Methodist, and the docs down there said, they'll do the heart surgery first, and I survive, they'll do the lung transplant. So in February of 2013, I had open heart surgery, 14. And then on April, I had a single lung transplant. So
Right.
there's a little bit more to the story. It was no question. It was a very hard surgery, and I was intubated and in the ICU for about 2 months. During that time, one of the feeding tubes pierced the edge of my upper intestine, and so in October, it turned out
We came back to Florida.
I came to Florida, and I had acute pain in my stomach. It turned out that I had a portion of my upper intestine had died. So I went into surgery, and they had to cut it out. At that time, I went systemic, and they believe that's probably was the cause of my kidney issues. Septic. I went septic because that's when my kidney issues really started. I was on dialysis for about a month then. Other than that, it's been a pretty smooth road, except for pneumonia and prostate cancer.
Except for. Okay, and when we're talking about your lung transplant, what I was trying to ask is, we're talking about the right lung as opposed to the left lung.
Yes, they couldn't do the left lung because I just had heart surgery. They didn't want to mess with it.
Was there any kind of effort to slow or stop the issues that you were having with your lungs?
Yes, the Jewish National Pulmonary, which I cannot say enough about. They were wonderful. They put me on some experimental drugs. At that time, they were experimenting with CellCept as a pre-drug to see if that would slow it down. And we don't know whether it did or didn't. I also investigated a number of therapies. One was stem cell, and that turned out to me. The University of Miami back then was doing a research project on stem cells, but I was too far along for that study, and I don't know what happened with that study. So those are the only two alternatives.
Okay. Just so our audience understands,
Yes.
it's my understanding that with lung transplants, only the most severe cases are considered. Is that a fair statement, Greg?
That is true. When you're given a score, your pulmonologist will give you a score at each meeting you have while you're on the list, and the lower your score means you're closer to the end of your time. Excuse me, the higher the score. And so when they give when a lung is available, they give it to the individuals that is at the top of the list. So it's unlike kidneys where you just sit and wait. There's only, I think last year there were 2,700 lung transplants across the nationwide. So getting a lung is like winning a lottery.
Okay.
I was very, very fortunate.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand. Your lung transplant occurred in 2014. You received a right lung transplant at Houston Methodist Hospital. How did that come about? Did you get like the call? Were you already hospitalized? What happened?
Well, if the truth be known, I'm a tax CPA, and I had become pretty well specialized. And one of the individuals I had helped over the years was part of the Houston hospital. So he invited me to go down there and visit them. And when I visited them, they said, you have to move here. And so we moved there, and with it,
Well, we moved there
we moved there in
in
January.
January.
And we did the heart. And as soon as the heart was done, 9 days after I came off of this,
You had to wait 6 weeks for recovery.
excuse me, my wife is reminding me, I had to wait 6 weeks after my heart surgery. And then they put me on the list, and I got the lung in 9 days. So so that was pretty quick. And they did call me
Wow.
home. But
Okay.
we were living in Houston. We had moved to Houston.
Let's talk a little bit about how long your lung transplant has lasted. I understand it's been a while.
Yeah. I've been
9 years in.
I've been very fortunate. I have my 9-year anniversary this April. So the statistics show that, you know, I 50% of the people that had a lung transplant probably didn't make it past 5 years. But occasionally I run across people that have had longer time, you know, 13, 14, 15, but 10, 12 years is pretty high.
So the closer you get to the 10-year mark, we have to have some concerns. Is that a fair statement?
They do. I guess so. It's I'm not sure how to evaluate this. I know this, that when I came out of surgery, there was an expected level of pulmonary function that I should have had, and my expected level was about 70%. So I was below what they really had expected. Every time I go to see the pulmonologist, they do a pulmonary function test, and every single time I've inched up just a bit. So now I'm up to about 85%. So I'm still showing my improvements are still going in the right direction. I don't know how you measure it. You know, I'm a mathematician. I should understand statistics. I'm also an actuary. So
I didn't know that.
you're supposed to be able to predict things. But I
Okay.
think you have to look at my health right now is very good. You know, was it a month ago I rode 18 miles on my bicycle, but all of a sudden recently it's been that my hemoglobin has fallen, and I don't have any energy. It's very frustrating.
Gotcha. It's my understanding that you are taking approximately 32 medicines every day to protect your lungs. Can you tell us why are you taking so many pills?
Well, you know, I have to take I take basically tacrolimus, sirolimus pills, which prevent rejection of my organs. And then, so they're to keep your body from rejecting your organs, much as if you had a thorn in your finger would be rejected from your body. And I take prednisone. And then on top of that, I have to take an antibiotic. Since I don't have any immune system, I have to take antibiotics, and I take 2 different types of antibiotics. And there's a number of particular issues that pop up with lung transplants, such as something called CMV, cytomegalovirus, I had to be aware of as a lung transplant. I take a pill for that. I have a thyroid pill, and because of I take a bunch of blood pressure pills. So, and there's probably of the 32 I take, there's probably 7 that are required by a vitamin D, because some of the tacrolimus leaches the calcium out of your bones. So you have to take that, and you have to take calcium. So they just all add up. It's just a wonderful diet. You always have
Okay. Our good friend Kent Bressler is wishing you a good evening from Kerrville.
Thank you. So it's not that I want to take all these. In fact, I just got a new pill. What's this new one?
That's for the phosphorus.
Oh, I'm building up phosphorus now in my body because of my kidneys. So now I'm taking a phosphate aggregator, phosphate,
Calcium.
calcium
Calcium.
acetate.
But you're no longer taking calcium.
Yeah.
You're taking vitamin D.
So it's an interesting life.
Sounds like it.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did a good job.
Uh,
I wanted to point out, Greg, because of the medications that you take, this makes you more susceptible to things like colds, viral infections. Is that a fair statement for me to say?
That is absolutely true. For instance, and like when COVID came around, even though my granddaughter lived nearby, I couldn't hug her for almost 2 years. Until you're right. I catch colds very easily. All my friends know now not to visit if they have a cold. We were at a New Year's Eve party and 2 of the guests were turned away because they came in with a cold, and my friends know it. So people have been very helpful with me. Now, if I can just find someone with an O kidney.
Right. It's my understanding that the anti-rejection medications that you take for your lung transplant have injured your kidneys and are basically leaving you with 2 options, either to go on dialysis or to have a kidney transplant. Is that true?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
As to which medications, I don't know, but there are 2 that are particularly harsh on the kidneys that are important for me to live on, to take in order to live. And
Okay.
I talked to my nephrologist the other day about changing one of them. He says, it's just at this point, it doesn't really matter.
All right. I know that you have concerns then about infection from your immunosuppressants by being in center taking hemodialysis. Can you discuss that with us a little bit?
That is so true. My wife and I, we haven't been out to eat in 3 years. We don't go to a movie theater. We don't do anything in a room with other people. The aspect of hemodialysis really does scare me, being immunosuppressed. And but the only time I ever did it was when I was in Tampa during my surgery after my transplant. It's a frightening.
Have you had issues since your lung transplant where you did catch a cold, have a virus, something happened because you're so susceptible?
Several times.
Several times.
You got RSV.
I had RSV one time, which put me in the hospital, and it developed into pneumonia, which kept me in the hospital for a while. That's been, I think, the only other time I've been to the hospital since my transplant. But it's something I just had to be very careful with.
Okay. Some people talk about the alternative of peritoneal dialysis, a home dialysis. Do you have concerns about peritonitis or other infections, even in the home environment?
Jim, I'm a real, yes. I've talked to my nephrologist, and we're going to try peritoneal will be the first thing we're going to try. But he's cautioned us that the chance of getting infected with peritonitis is very, very high, unless it just is very high because of my ability my not having any immune system. I don't know what I can do about it. You know, I do what I can. Other people do it, so I guess I'll figure a way around it.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
You know, we think, you know, we don't know probably everything there is to know about dialysis at this point. We've learned probably just enough to know that we want to go the PD method rather than the hemo method. But I know a lot of people do the dialysis, and if that's necessary, then I'm sure we'll figure out how to do it.
Okay.
You know,
just so people understand the possibility of infections, the effect that immunosuppressive drugs have had on your kidney. Is this the reason that you're looking for a living donor? At least one of the reasons.
That's one of the issues, yes.
Okay, can you explain why you're looking for a living donor?
It seems to me that my standard of living would be much higher with a transplant. And the burden I'd be placing on my family would be much less. Because it's quite frankly, as I look at this, the burden for PD is not going to fall on me. It's going to fall on my poor wife. She's going to have to carry one more potential stress in her life. We do like to travel. We had a motorhome. We traveled in the motorhome. I see that whole aspect of my life change. I don't know how easy peritoneal is going to be with traveling. So I see it very limiting my actions. I paint, and I've traveled to places to paint. I think it's going to complicate that side of it. I've lived with a transplant now, and it works. It certainly altered my life, and I'm hoping that the kidney transplant will do the same sort of thing.
Okay, let's talk about your kidney problems or issues for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out that you had kidney problems? Did you have symptoms before? What led you to seek care?
The third surgery, the surgery I had, the third surgery in 2014, where my intestine had been pierced and died, and they had to do a resection. I went on dialysis then. At that time, I came under the care of the head of the transplant team. He's no longer the head of the transplant team, and I came under his care. So I've been under his care for 9 years. And he's the one that's referred me onto the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of found out about your kidney issues as a result of a resection surgery. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Because my kidneys failed when I was in the hospital, so they called that doctor in. When I went into when I went sepsis, basically my whole system shut down. They called the kidney doctor in, and he the one that took over my care at that point. And I've been seeing him every 6 months since then.
Okay. What kind of steps, if any, have been taken to slow the progress of your kidney failure? Is there anything that they have been able to do for you to extend your time before dialysis or transplant?
Yes. Well, my kidney doctor told me how many years ago? Probably 5 years ago, that I eventually would be on dialysis. He was reading the numbers, and in March of last year, we had a discussion. We went on a total vegetarian diet, and the nephrologist says that's probably given me the time I've had without problems. So we've been totally off meat and eating a very careful diet. In fact, we had potato soup tonight and salad. But yeah.
Okay, I won't tell nobody. Let's talk about some of the things that you have done to try and find a living donor. I know that you have put up a blog site, and the link to that site is streaming across the page now, kidneyforgreg.com. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and why you've done that?
Well, when they told me that I was on the list, I hadn't met your group yet. I felt the only way I could really let people know is to create a website to put all the information in relevant to me and to my my kidney needs. It was also a great learning exercise because I explored a lot of different sites and talked to a lot of people, and I spent a lot of time doing it. After I created the page, what I was left with was how to use it. And I've been posting occasionally on Facebook, but I'm not sure I'm doing the best thing. I'm not doing as much as I can. So
Okay.
I did it to be able to educate people into the issues as they related to me.
Well, you don't worry about sharing that around anymore. I took care of that little problem for you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. You also have a kidney page on Facebook. Is that correct?
Do I think so.
Yeah, your Uncle Jim built you one, so I know it's there.
I see it right there on the bottom of the screen. I have one, right?
Yeah, you do. And that's the link so people can find it. So if they want to drill down a little bit more on what's happening with Greg, we update that periodically. We add pictures. We update his status so everybody knows what's going on. I know that you are currently working with Kidney Solutions. Can you tell us the things that they're helping you with?
The guys have been a godsend. Just having someone that understood the issues that we're facing, my wife and I, because up until 6 months ago, we knew very little at all about kidney and kidney transplants. But you guys, your group has been great in helping us talk through some of the problems and understand the issues. Basically, just being there, giving us support. I was going frantic with my webpage, and I finished it just about the first time that Kent contacted me, and it was almost I wasn't sleeping, and right after that, you gave me the signs for the car. It just relieved my anxiety. I really thank you. No matter what happens here, I can't thank you enough for the support. It was tremendous. I tell my friends about you. You very seldom run across a group that will actually go out of their way to help someone.
So you got car signs. Did you get the flyers too?
I got the flyers, and I've used a couple of them. I probably haven't used them as effectively as I should, but I've gone around to visit a couple of the churches and talk with their pastors. It's a daunting exercise. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about your current listing status. You're listed at Tampa General Hospital. The link to their hospital is going scrolling across the page now. Your transplant coordinator there is Melanie C. Fletcher, 813-844-7137. Likewise, scrolling across the screen and in the comments to the original broadcast. Talk to us about what's going on at Tampa General right at the moment.
You mean with respect to me?
Yeah.
I really don't know. I'm just the kidney transplant process at Tampa is so unlike the lung transplant at Duke, at Houston, at Denver. It seems to be it's really complicated. Maybe because there's so many more people that are looking for transplants, kidneys versus transplanted lungs. Because I think Tampa probably only has a list of maybe with 110 maximum for the lung transplant. I think they do about 100 a year. I don't know what the transplant. I don't know what, but it's probably in the hundreds. But it seems to me, from my standpoint, it's very disorganized. I've had nurses that I'm working with that just stop responding, only for me to find out that they left the practice. There seems to be the coordination of what's going on is hard. Also, since I seem to be squeezed into the living donor program, I'm not permitted to have contact with the living donor program because HIPAA prevents them from telling me anything or from me telling them anything. So I don't know what's happening. I can't even call up and ask them if anybody has signed up for me.
To test for you.
To test for you. I mean, there's no way for me. HIPAA prevents them from telling me. So the only way I know is if someone will call me and tell me something. But as I understand it right now, Tampa will keep me on the list until April 19th for a living donor. And they seem to imply that the surgery had to be done by April 19th, which I don't see is be impossible to happen by now. I don't think it can happen in 2 months like that, 3 months.
Okay.
So, but I had a long talk with my nephrologist, and it's very frustrating on our part too because we don't want to really alienate and you can so easily misunderstand people today because everything's done by texting and emails, and so we're just sort of waiting to see what happens. But I'm hoping my nephrologist is going to get back to me and tell me that I'll have some money relief. But otherwise, I think right now I'm facing a real deadline of April 19th, 2023. If I don't have a solid donor by then, I think I'm off the list.
Okay.
That's my impression.
And that, when we say off the list, that's with Tampa General, correct, in Florida?
That's with Tampa General. Right.
Okay. You and I were talking before the broadcast, and you were talking to me about what happens if you end up on dialysis. You're not opposed to checking out a different kidney transplant center if you end up on dialysis. Is that a fair statement?
Right. I think as the April 19th comes and I find a donor after that, I'm still willing to try another place. I think my hands are tied until April 19th.
Okay.
But yeah.
For living donation purposes, for direct donation purposes, it's my understanding that you are a blood type O. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That's true. Yes.
And you can only accept a direct living kidney donation from another O blood type.
Yes.
Your daughters you mentioned were AB type.
A.
You can't accept a direct donation from them.
I can't.
Or Kathy.
Right.
Okay. There was some discussion from your last visit with your nephrologist at Tampa General. It had something to do with paired donation because your daughters have tried to donate on your behalf to move you up to the top of the list and get an O donor. Can you talk to us about what's happening currently with paired donation?
This is my understanding as of a conversation I had this week. I don't know if my nephrologist has been able to get them to change, but they said basically right now, as of now, I have one person that's a donor in the pipeline for me. They've done part of their testing, and it could either be my son or my daughter, my son-in-law or my daughter. I'm not sure which one. They won't tell me. So my understanding is that if one of them completes their testing and they're approved, they'll allow me to stay on the transplant list long enough for that person to be a donor under a paired program, and they will do what they can to accelerate it.
Okay.
They may not let me take on any new donors.
All right.
I don't know what that means. After April 19th.
All right. Let's talk.
Is it confusing to you too?
Yeah, buddy, it really is. You know, I'm from the we try and help patients school. You know, I'm not worried about getting out of accepting my responsibility kind of stuff. So I'm kind of wondering what's happening.
Well, I sent you the email with the date. I showed the date in it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So it's just okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I understand that for a normal kidney transplant where you're listed Tampa General, there's a 4 to 5 year wait for a deceased donor donation.
They told me.
However, if you get a live donor, the wait is much shorter. Is that correct?
If I have a live donor, then they do a paired donation. Yes.
Okay. So, and I also understand that when it comes to evaluations, you're frequently evaluated, like at least every 6 months. Is that a fair statement?
Evaluated for what? For
kidney transplant eligibility?
I don't know. I don't know whether it's a one-time. They didn't imply that I could go back on. I think it's
okay.
I have no idea. You know, it's the April 19th day seems to be firm. Whether we start over again with everything, I don't know. Again, they went, you know, in my discussion with them, and maybe this isn't fair, is they were commenting that I should be thankful that I had got as many years as I did out of it. I got 9 years out of my lungs, and I'm 77 years old. And, you know, maybe it wasn't cost effective. I think they used that term at one point in time to give me a kidney at my age. Now, why someone would say that on the phone is that makes no sense. But
no, I agree with that. And like I told you before we came on the broadcast tonight, we recently had a very good friend that received a kidney transplant at the age of 80. And under normal circumstances, it doesn't matter how old you are, it matters how healthy you are, whether or not you can survive the transplant. So, you know, a bright red line for no particular reason is baffling to those of us that have been advocates for kidney patients for a very long time.
yeah, you can imagine how baffling.
And I imagine it's baffling to you too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I just have to wait here for my nephrologist to do what he says.
Okay, but at least when if we end up on dialysis, we're willing to keep looking around, correct?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, and as we stated before, you're working with Kent, you're working with Shannon at Kidney Solutions. You've gotten the signs on the side of your car. You've gotten the flyers. You've been to our support group. You know, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights. You've gotten advice, and all of this at no cost, right? They haven't charged you anything.
No, not at all. I've even tried to send them some money. They won't take it.
That's my guys, all right. All right, let's,
Turn me
you
down.
asked me before the broadcast, you wanted to talk about your artwork, so let's talk about Greg, the artist, and the
You want
link to where they can find your work, your accomplishments. I'm hoping they can buy some of your stuff. Is scrolling across the screen now. Talk to us about your artwork. What led you to artwork?
Eh, are you implying that an accountant can't be creative?
No,
As an actuary, I wouldn't be.
not at all. What I'm thinking about is you're saying in your blog post that you had to give up the photography work, right?
Yeah.
Because of the weight of the equipment, and now you're painting, and you've done very well. You win awards. You've been at shows.
Mhm.
That's what I want you to talk about.
Well, when I was when my at the point I had my first inkling that I needed a lung transplant and recognized that it was the end of my career. My wife and I were running a company with 33 employees, and we had to sell the company off. And fortunately, we sold it to our employees who worked with us. But everything that I knew, and I was a national specialist on 10 pages of the Internal Revenue Code. There was 10 pages of the code, which is 1,000 pages long, and the 10 pages was my specialty. And when it was over, so I had to find something else to do. And I took this painting courses just to get something to do, and I really enjoyed the painting. And that's what sort of took off. So, yeah. But I've been doing photography throughout my whole life, mostly landscape photography.
Okay. Has your artwork been displayed anywhere at all?
I'm in 2 galleries right now. There's a gallery in Franklin, North Carolina, Uptown Gallery. I'm in there, and there's a gallery in St. Petersburg, and I've been in a few shows. So I've had some good successes. I wish I had the energy to do a lot more right now, but I just can't.
Okay.
But
Maybe after that kidney transplant, we'll get that back for you, buddy.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah,
But
me too.
Here's a picture. This is my daughter and granddaughter behind me.
Oh,
They're not granddaughters.
My 2 granddaughters. My 2 granddaughters. Got a
okay.
white spot in the middle of it, but yeah.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Do you
So-
have? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
No, not fine. I was just looking. I really appreciate your doing this. I hope that there's some benefit in it.
Me too. Do you have any final statements or remarks that you would like to make before we close the broadcast for the evening? Anything at all that you would like to say to our audience?
I just appreciate you listening to my story. And if you think you can help out, I certainly appreciate it. And maybe I'll give you one of my paintings.
Okay, well, I'm going to show them some of your paintings in a couple of minutes. Okay, so they'll get to see that.
Fine.
All right, Greg, I appreciate you coming on, talking to us about lung transplants, talking to us about your need for a kidney, educating us on those issues. I'm going to talk to the audience now a little bit about some upcoming broadcasts. So if you want to, you can leave. If you want to hang out until I'm all the way done, that's fine too. Okay.
Thanks a lot. And folks, thank you very much for listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Greg. All right, everybody. That's our show for tonight. Upcoming broadcasts. On the 20th of January, we have our good friend Juan Beck. Juan recently was transplanted. Very, very, very interesting kidney story. You don't want to miss out on that. On the 27th of January, Alex Jewell is going to be on the broadcast. He's a kidney transplant patient, a stellar advocate, kind of a young guy, got some interesting things to say. We want to make sure we check that out. On the 3rd of February, Dr. Sandra Caseta is going to be on the broadcast. She works with gastro and hepatology patients and has a connection with kidney disease. She's with the physicians workforce. They're trying to make sure that the doctors that treat you are as diverse as the kidney population is. So interesting discussions with them. Shauna and Anthony Mansfield are on the broadcast February 10th. We're going to be talking about the need for a kidney again. On the 17th of February, Philip Jones Jr. is on with us. As you know, Philip's a fellow broadcaster. He's a kidney patient. He's a kidney advocate. He's currently on dialysis. He's also seeking. So a lot of things to cover with my buddy Philip. On the 24th, Mark Scotch is going to be on the broadcast. Mark is one of those guys that rides his bike across the country, raising money primarily for research in kidney disease for kidney patients. Very, very good advocate. Should be very interesting conversation with Mark. On the 10th of March, we're going to talk with our old friend, Mark Miller. As you know, Mark is a standout on Facebook and on social media advocacy. He's a kidney transplant patient himself. He was a pediatric kidney patient, and of course, this is carried on into his adulthood. He's had some medical issues recently, and he wants to come on and talk about that. On the 31st, our good friend Bobby Reed, who was checking us out tonight on the broadcast, is going to come on. Bobby's going to talk to us about her son, Alex. Alex is a guy that had a kidney transplant previously, was on home dialysis, got his kidney transplant, had it for several years. Recently, his transplanted kidney is failing. I understand from talking to Bobby that Alex will be going back on dialysis very soon. They're talking about home hemodialysis. So Alex is back in the market. We created a kidney page for Alex, and so we're working very hard to try and help Alex find a kidney transplant as well. Maria Grijalva, Grijalva. I know I'll pronounce that name right by the time we get to the broadcast, is an award winner with the National Kidney Foundation. We're going to be talking to Maria about her kidney advocacy and the work that she does for other people and how she's connected to the National Kidney Foundation. She is a Celeste Award winner, which is like the highest award they give out. That's it's a long name named after the founder of the NKF, but basically what it amounts to is she's the advocate of the year this year for the NKF. And this just came up today. This is very interesting. On the 21st of April, we're going to be doing a broadcast with Stephanie Lynn Mosier. I call her Steph. She's a friend of mine. Steph has Gittleman's disease as well as polycystic kidney disease. We're going to be talking about the effects of the two of those. Apparently, only 2% of the population have Gittleman's. So it's a new topic for us here on Kidney Stories 2. Stephanie is struggling. She's having issues with all of her organs, her heart. She has a husband. She has 2 young children. She approached me. She said to me, "I want to do this before I pass." and I just couldn't say no. So we're going to record the broadcast in February. I've got our permission to actually play the broadcast on the 21st of April. I did have somebody that dropped out today in my broadcast list, so I'm probably going to move her broadcast play up to March. I want to do it as closely as I can to when it's recorded, so the information is accurate. I promised Greg I'd show some stuff. Hang on. Your Uncle Jim's got pictures. Here's a little bit of the artwork that Greg has done. I think this one's called Chaos, right, Greg?
Yes, it is, yes.
And kind of a still water painting. Greg has mentioned his family. Here he is with his family. I'm assuming
All of them.
Kathy's in the picture, grandchildren, children are in the picture.
Yep.
Got a little bit of everybody. This is Greg. I think, is this a daughter, Greg?
That's my daughter and I in Yellowstone.
Okay. And Greg and the wife and the hats. Greg on the horse. He's the guy at the white horse and the white hat. Of course, my guy's got the white hat on. What else would he have?
That's in Yellowstone. Yeah.
All right. Pictures of the fam. Again,
okay.
just a beautiful. Do you understand now why Greg wants to hang around so he can be with his family? What a beautiful family he has. This is my favorite picture of Greg. It's from his. Oops, I'm sorry, too fast. From his blog page. This is the picture I used to announce the broadcast. So a lot of pictures of Greg, a little bit of his artwork, so you can check it out. And all right, everybody, we're at the point where we're ready to wrap up. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with our friend Juan Beck.
Are you still there, Jim?
Yeah, I'm still here. Hang on. Our friends at Kidney Solutions. Okay. Greg, we're still live. People can still see and hear us, okay? The only thing I have to do yet is actually end the broadcast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm in awe that you did this for me. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I hope it helps you. And I just want you to know I'm going to share this broadcast about 200 times over the weekend. So I hope that it gets out there and people see it.
Well,
so okay. All right. I'm going to end the broadcast now. You and Kathy have a good evening. Okay.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye now.